Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're stepping onto a stage we all occupy every single day, whether we realize it or not. We're diving deep into Erving Goffman's classic, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life.
It's a really groundbreaking book. And Goffman kicks things off with this fascinating quote from Santayana, basically saying that masks and surfaces aren't fake things covering up reality. They're actually part of nature itself.
Yeah, that idea that the shells and surfaces are integral, it sets the stage, doesn't it? He's arguing that the face we present, the words we use, they're not just superficial.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, really. We want to unpack this whole dramaturgical perspective. Look at how individuals, how you present yourself in just ordinary situations, how you control the impression others get. We'll dig into the roles, the settings, the strategies Goffman outlines.
Okay, let's get into it. Goffman basically gives us this toolkit to analyze almost any social setting, your home, your workplace, wherever, like it's a kind of theater.
He does acknowledge, that it's a model. Life isn't always perfectly rehearsed like a play, obviously. It's real.
Right, sometimes things go off script, but the framework itself is just brilliant for cutting through all the casual stuff we take for granted and seeing the work involved in just appearing normal.
To really get it, though, we have to start where Goffman starts, with this fundamental issue in all human interaction, information asymmetry.
Information asymmetry. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
It means when you meet someone, the really crucial stuff about them, are they honest? Are they competent? What are they really thinking? You can't actually see it directly.
It's hidden or just not immediately obvious.
Both, really. It's either deep inside them psychologically or it relates to things outside the here and now. So you can't just instantly verify if someone's telling the truth or if they actually know what they're doing.
Which creates a problem for interacting, right? How do you proceed if you can't know for sure?
Exactly. And Goffman says because we lack that conclusive proof, every interaction has this sort of promissory character. We basically have to take people on faith.
On faith.
Yeah, you trust that the image they're projecting is, well, close enough to reality, or that they'll deliver on the promise their performance makes. You invest your attention, your social effort, expecting some kind of fair return. Without that leap of faith, society just wouldn't work. Think about it, hiring someone, trusting a doctor, even going on a date.
That makes sense. You have to assume something is real. And that reliance on faith, I guess, makes every little signal super important, which leads to how we communicate.
Precisely. Goffman splits communication into two key types. First, you've got expressions given. This is the straightforward stuff, the words you use, the symbols you deploy, specifically to convey a particular piece of information. Traditional communication, basically.
What you intend to say.
Right. But Goffman's really interested in the second type, expressions given off. This is much broader, more theatrical. It's everything else you do.
Like body language, tone of voice.
All of that, yeah. But also the context. Your appearance, maybe a slight hesitation, a sigh you didn't mean to let out. It's this whole range of actions that other people treat as symptoms of your true state or character. And crucially, people often assume these given-off expressions are unintentional.
So they seem more trustworthy, more revealing.
That's the perception, yes. And that's where the performance really kicks in. Because if the audience thinks these subtle cues are leaks of truth, a smart performer learns how to manage them.
So you can fake the unintentional stuff too.
Absolutely. Goffman points out you can intentionally mislead using both channels. Lying with words, that's deceit. But manipulating the context or the nonverbal signals to give off a false impression, that's feigning.
And the whole point of all this performing the deceit and the feigning is what?
Simple, really. To control the definition of the situation. The performer that's you, me, everyone mobilizes all their activity, verbal and nonverbal, to try and convey an impression that serves their interests. You want the audience, the other people in the interaction, to see things your way and act accordingly, voluntarily.
Goffman has this great, slightly cynical example about that, doesn't he? The dormitory girls.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. He talks about college girls living in dorms where popularity was kind of measured by how many phone calls you got.
Right, a very visible measure.
So what does a girl do if she feels she isn't getting enough calls? She might actually arrange with a friend to have herself paged a few times when she knows other girls are around to hear it.
It's not about the call itself. It's about manufacturing the appearance of being popular.
Exactly. It's pure stagecraft. And that leads us to another key idea, the working consensus.
The working consensus. Okay.
Goffman argues that most interactions don't actually require genuine, heartfelt agreement between people. What they require is that participants sort of suppress their true feelings, if necessary, and project a view of the situation that everyone can temporarily accept, just to keep things moving smoothly.
So it's not about agreeing on what's really true.
No, it's more like a temporary agreement about whose claims about the situation will be respected for now. Like two friends might act as affectionately towards each other, even if one is secretly annoyed, because the claim of friendship needs to be honored in that moment.
Or think about a doctor and patient. The doctor needs to project calm competence. The patient needs to show respect for that expertise. Even if the patient is terrified and the doctor is stressed, they maintain that consensus.
Right. If either side breaks that unspoken agreement, if the patient questions everything or the doctor admits they're unsure, the whole interaction can just collapse. The key is maintaining that surface agreement, that veneer, to avoid open conflict over how you're defining the situation.
Okay, so that's the basic problem and the general strategy. Now let's dive into the individual performer more. How do they feel about the part they're playing? Goffin talks about sincerity versus cynicism.
Yeah, this is really interesting psychological spectrum he lays out. At one end, you have the sincere performer. This person is totally bought into their own act. For them, the reality they're projecting is the real reality. They genuinely believe in the role and the values it represents. Goffman thinks this is probably the most common state in everyday life.
Just people being themselves, essentially, or believing they are?
Pretty much. But then, at the other extreme, you've got the cynical performer. This person's not taken in by their own performance at all. They know it's an act.
Like the classic con artist.
Exactly. The con man is the archetype. He manipulates the audience's beliefs purely as a means to an end, maybe even looks down on the normal world he's tricking. But it's not just con artists. Think about certain professions where a degree of maybe calculated detachment is necessary.
And Goffman suggests people can move between these poles, right? It's not fixed.
Definitely. He talks about a cycle of belief. Someone might start out cynical. Imagine a new army recruit just following the rules to avoid getting yelled at. They don't believe in it initially.
Just going through the motions.
Right. But over time, as they get socialized, maybe they start to internalize the discipline, feel pride in their unit. They can actually become sincere about it.
And it can go the other way, too, from sincere to cynical.
Yeah, and often as a kind of defense mechanism. He mentions medical students. They might start out really idealistic, totally sincere about helping people, but the realities of the job, the emotional toll, the less glamorous parts, it can lead them to develop a kind of professional cynicism.
A way to cope, to protect themselves.
Yeah, exactly. That cynicism acts like a shield, insulating their real self from the constant demands of the role.
Okay, so whether you're sincere or cynical, you need the right equipment, I guess, to pull off the performance. Goffman calls this the front.
Yes, the front. This is really central. He defines it as that part of the performance that's sort of fixed in general, and it works to define the situation for whoever's watching. It's all the expressive equipment you use, sometimes deliberately, sometimes not.
And he breaks the front down further, doesn't he?
He does, into two main components. First, there's the setting. This is the physical backdrop, the scenery for your performance.
Like an office or a living room.
Exactly. The decor, the furniture, how tidy it is, it all sends signals. And he notes this interesting trend, even back then, of people essentially renting settings, like civil servants using luxurious hired rooms for meetings to project an image of high status, even if their actual offices are, pretty basic.
Borrowing the scenery to enhance the role. Makes sense. What's the second part?
That's the personal front. This is the stuff that moves the performer. Think clothing, badges of rank or profession, hairstyle, posture, your way of speaking. Even things like age, race, and sex characteristics become part of this personal front.
And he divides that again into appearance and manner.
Right. Appearance mainly tells us about the performer's social status. Are they wearing a uniform? A business suit? Casual clothes? It also signals their temporary state. Are they working, relaxing, at a formal event?
Okay. And manner.
Manner is more about the interaction role the performer expects to play in the upcoming situation. It's like a warning signal. If someone approaches you with a really aggressive, challenging manner, you brace yourself for conflict. If they approach with a quiet, apologetic manner, you expect to take the lead.
And ideally, for the performance to work, all these things, setting, appearance, manner, need to line up, right? They need to be consistent.
Absolutely. Coherence is key. We expect a doctor's serious manner to match their white coat and the clinical setting. If there's a mismatch, say, the doctor is wearing a clown nose,
Right.
it disrupts the whole definition of the situation.
So you've got your front sorted, but then there's the challenge of making sure the audience actually sees what you want them to see. He calls this dramatic realization.
Yes. This is about actively infusing your performance with signs that highlight the facts you want to convey, especially facts that might otherwise be invisible or easy to miss.
Making the invisible visible.
Precisely. Think about those nurses again. A lot of their most skilled work might be observations, noticing tiny changes.
Mhm.
But that's invisible work.
Right. Families might just see them standing around.
So to dramatize their competence and importance, they need to engage in visible activities that the audience recognizes as nursing work, changing a dressing, adjusting equipment, bustling around.
Yeah.
Even if the observation was more critical at that moment, the visible actions realize the role.
It's about making sure your effort is seen and credited. Goffman also had that example about making things look effortless, didn't he? Like a radio talk.
Oh yeah. To make a radio broadcast sound spontaneous and natural, the speaker has to put in huge amounts of hidden work. Meticulously crafting the script, practicing the delivery, timing pauses. All this backstage labor is channeled into creating the illusion of effortlessness for the audience.
Fascinating. It's like the harder you work to make it look easy, the more successful the performance.
Exactly. And that connects to the next big idea. Idealization.
Idealization, so presenting a better version of ourselves.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Goffman says performers tend to offer an impression that's idealized. It conforms to the official values and expectations of society. We try to seem, a little bit better, a little more competent, a little more moral than maybe we really are.
We're playing up to the ideal version of the role.
Right. Professions do this collectively, too.
Yeah.
Think of the idealized image of doctors, lawyers, scientists. There's a kind of collective pose they adopt.
But maintaining that perfect, idealized front means you have to hide stuff, right? The
Yes.
parts that don't fit the image.
Absolutely. Concealment is crucial. Goffman details several types of dark secrets, things incompatible with the idealized self that performers routinely hide.
Okay, let's unpack these. What kind of secrets are we talking about?
Well, first, there are secret pleasures or economies, things you enjoy or ways you save money that don't fit the image. He talks about Scottish lairds who lived really frugally in private, eating basic food, but would put on these huge, expensive banquets for visitors to project an image of aristocratic wealth.
Hiding the thrifty reality behind the performance of luxury.
Exactly. Second, concealing secret profitable activity. This could be, illegal side deals, shady practices, anything that makes money but undermines the official, legitimate front of the business or role.
Got it. What else?
Third, hiding corrected errors and mistakes. You present the finished product, the polished report, the successful surgery. You don't usually show the audience all the drafts you threw away, the mistakes you made along the way, the messy process. It maintains an illusion of competence, maybe even infallibility.
Makes sense. Keep the process hidden.
Fourth, hiding the dirty work. These are tasks that are necessary for the performance, but are somehow degrading or contradict the idealized image. The classic example is the undertaker.
Right, the physical preparation of the body.
Yeah. That has to happen backstage, completely hidden, because the reality of it would shatter the more spiritual, serene image presented at the funeral service itself.
Definitely. Okay, what's fifth?
Concealing the sacrifice of standards. This is when you have to secretly violate one ideal to maintain another more visible one. He gives the example of mental hospital attendants. The ideal is nonviolence. But to maintain the visible standard of order on the ward, they might resort to a hidden act of violence, like using a wet towel to restrain someone without leaving marks.
Wow. That's dark, trading one principle for another behind the scenes.
It highlights the pressures of maintaining the front. And finally, sixth, hiding incompatible motives or history. This means concealing how you really got the role or the compromises you made. Maybe someone got a job partly because of connections, not just merit, but their performance emphasizes only the merit part.
Hiding the backstory, the deals, the things that don't fit the pure narrative of how you got there.
Exactly. And idealization isn't always about puffing yourself up. Sometimes it's the opposite. Idealization in reverse.
Playing down your status or skills.
Yeah. Goffman observed this with American college girls in the 1950s. To fit the cultural ideal of femininity at the time and not threaten the perceived superiority of their male dates, some women would consciously play dumb.
Hiding their intelligence.
Right. Deliberately misspelling words, pretending not to understand something, letting the guy explain things they already knew perfectly well. It took real effort, real concealment of their actual competence to perform the idealized feminine role expected of them.
That's a powerful example of how social expectations shape the performance. Okay, so we've looked at the individual. What happens when people perform together? Goffman talks about teams.
Yes, the team.
Yeah.
This is crucial for understanding larger social settings. A
Mhm.
team, for Goffman, is basically any set of people who cooperate in staging a particular routine or maintaining a specific definition of the situation for an audience.
Like the staff in a restaurant working together to create the dining experience.
Perfect example. Now, the key thing about teams is team cohesion. If you're all cooperating to fool the audience, you can't really maintain that same illusion among yourselves.
Ah, so teammates are backstage with each other, even when they're technically on stage.
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
They're in the know. They share the secrets. They know about the shortcuts, the hidden problems, the dirty work. They see behind each other's fronts. This creates a different dynamic within the team compared to how they interact with the audience.
And that requires internal rules, right, to keep the team performance intact.
Absolutely. Teammates have to maintain solidarity against the audience. If one member makes a mistake during the performance, the others can't call them out right there in front of everyone.
That would blow the whole act.
Exactly. You have to wait until you're backstage to address it. They also need to agree on the line they're presenting beforehand, like those civil servants deciding their strategy before a meeting. Disagreeing publicly undermines the entire team's credibility.
This idea of backstage versus on stage seems really important. Goffman calls them regions.
Yes, the concept of regions is fundamental. He makes a sharp distinction between the back region, or backstage, and the front region, the stage.
So the back region is where you prepare, where you can relax.
Precisely. It's the place relative to a given performance where the impression fostered by the performance is knowingly contradicted. It's kept hidden from the audience. Behavior there is totally different.
How so?
Well, you drop the front. There's often a kind of coarse familiarity among teammates. People might use slang, complain about the audience, talk technically about how the performance is going, and crucially, they do things that would completely undermine the front region performance.
This is where the Shetland Hotel example comes in, isn't it? It's such a vivid illustration.
It really is. It's probably
Yeah.
the most famous example in the book. This hotel was trying to project a respectable middle-class image in its dining room that was the front region.
Nice tablecloths, polite service, proper food.
Right. But step through the door into the kitchen, the back region, and it was a different world.
What went on back there?
Total contrast. The owners and the staff used familiar nicknames, dropped the formal address. The food they ate themselves was basic island fare, leftovers, nothing like what the guests got. Goffman notes things like drying wet socks on the kettle,
Ugh.
cleaning fish on newspaper on the floor, things completely at odds with the image of middle-class hygiene and service being projected just feet away.
And the butter. Don't forget the butter.
Ah, yes, the butter pats. Guests would leave partly used pats of butter on their plates. Backstage, these would be collected, re-rolled to look fresh, and sent back out to the dining room.
Wow. That's a perfect example of hiding the secret economy to maintain the idealized front.
Exactly. It shows the intense pressure to maintain the front, even if it means questionable practices backstage. And the staff knew it. Goffman talks about the constant battle over keeping the kitchen door shut, so the audience couldn't glimpse the backstage reality.
So the back region is also about control, isn't it? Hiding the messy reality of work.
Definitely. It's where you can hide shortcuts, manage costs, prepare things without scrutiny. Like the Undertaker's prep room. It's essential for managing the performance presented out front.
Okay, so that's the back region. The front region is the stage itself, where the performance happens.
Right, where you're on. And behavior there is constantly under scrutiny, judged by standards of politeness, how you interact directly with the audience, and decorum.
Decorum. What does that cover?
Decorum is about how you conduct yourself when you're in view of the audience, but maybe not directly interacting. It includes things like posture, dress, maintaining the right level of seriousness or engagement. It's often about appearing to be properly occupied with the right kind of activity for that setting.
Which leads to those interesting opposites. Make work and make no work.
Yes. Make work is typically associated with lower status roles. It's the performance of appearing busy, especially when the boss is watching, even if you don't actually have much to do.
Like those shipyard workers tightening bolts that were already tight.
Exactly. Or hospital attendants saving chores for when the supervisor walks by. It's about demonstrating diligence, performing the role of worker.
And make no work is the opposite. Hiding work.
Yeah, often associated with higher, more genteel statuses, historically at least. Goffman uses the example of 19th century upper-class women. The ideal was that they didn't do practical, useful work, especially after dinner.
So if they were doing something useful, like sewing,
And visitors arrived unexpectedly, they'd quickly hide it, shove the needlework under the sofa cushion, pick up a book, and pretend they were just engaged in leisure. They performed ladylike uselessness by concealing their actual productive activity.
it's fascinating how the ideal dictates whether you need to fake working or fake not working. Okay, within the team, there are also specific roles for managing the show itself.
Right. You often have a director. This person isn't necessarily the highest status in other respects, but they manage the performance. They allocate roles, distribute the props or expressive equipment, coach other team members, and, importantly, discipline those who mess up, usually backstage, of course.
The stage manager, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And then you have the star, the person who has dramaturgical dominance. This is the focal point of the performance.
So the lead actor, like the boss or the king.
Often, yes. The person with formal power is frequently the star, but not always. Sometimes the star is someone with very little actual power, but who embodies the expressive focus of the event. Goffman's striking example is the corpse at a funeral.
The corpse as the star.
Think about it. The whole event revolves around the deceased. They are the absolute center of attention, the expressive heart of the performance. But they have zero actual control. The grieving family might also be stars in this sense, emotionally central, but maybe too grief-stricken to actually manage things.
So in that case, the undertaker is the director managing the show around the star.
Precisely. The director facilitates the star's performance. You also see figureheads acting as stars, like a union president who looks good and gives speeches, providing window dressing, while the experienced negotiators backstage are the real directors making the deals.
Okay, this framework is really detailed. But what happens when things go wrong? When the audience finds out things they shouldn't? Goffman talks about discrepant roles.
Yes, these are roles that mess with the usual alignment of who knows what and who has access to which region. They threaten the performance because they have information or access they shouldn't have, according to the standard script.
Like who? Who are these troublemakers?
Well, the most obvious is the informer. This is someone who pretends to be on the team, gets access to the backstage secrets.
And then spills the beans to the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They betray the team and expose the hidden reality. Very dangerous to the performance.
Okay. Who else?
Then you have the shell. This person looks like a regular audience member, but they're secretly working with the performers.
Like in a carnival game, pretending to win.
That's the classic example. But it happens in subtler ways. Goffman mentions a wife who subtly feeds her husband cues for an anecdote during a dinner party, making the story seem more spontaneous and impressive. She's playing the role of audience, but she's actually part of the husband's performance team.
Sneaky. What's the opposite of a shell?
That would be the spotter. This person also looks like an ordinary audience member, a customer, a patient, but they're secretly evaluating the performance for management or some external authority.
Like a secret shopper.
Exactly. Or a hospital inspector pretending to be a visitor. Performers have to be wary that any audience member might actually be a spotter.
Adds another layer of pressure. Any other discrepant roles?
There's the go-between or mediator. This person learns secrets from both the performers and the audience, maybe pretends loyalty to both, and uses that privileged information to negotiate between them. Think of a foreman mediating between workers and management.
Straddling the line.
Right. Then you have the intriguing category of the non-person. These are people who are physically present during the performance, often in the front region, but they're treated by the main performers as if they aren't there.
Like servants. Or maybe young children.
Exactly. Waitstaff, cleaners, elevator operators, sometimes they're very young or very old. While they're officially ignored, their mere presence can still subtly constrain the performer's behavior. You might not say certain things, even if the servant is invisible.
Interesting. And the last one?
The service specialist? These are people whose job it is to work on the performance or the front itself. Think lawyers helping craft a legal defense, accountants managing the financial front, interior decorators designing the setting, even janitors maintaining the physical space.
Why are they discrepant?
Because their work necessarily gives them access to backstage secrets or destructive information about their clients. The accountant knows the real financial situation behind the prosperous front. The janitor sees the empty bottles or the messy reality hidden from guests. This access often gives them a kind of cynical perspective on the performances they help maintain.
Okay, so lots of potential threats. How do performers handle slips or communicate outside the main performance? Goffman talks about communication out of character.
Yeah, this happens in a few ways. One key one, especially for team bonding, happens backstage. Derogation against the audience.
Mocking the customers.
Basically, yes. When the team is safely backstage, they might mimic, ridicule, or complain about the audience they just served or performed for. Think of sales girls imitating difficult customers.
Why do they do that?
It's a way to let off steam, build solidarity within the team, and kind of temporarily reject the audience's power and demands. It reinforces the us versus them boundary.
Makes sense. What about communicating out of character when the audience is present?
That's team collusion. This is secret communication between team members that the audience isn't supposed to notice. It happens right under their noses.
How? Like secret signals.
Exactly. Sometimes it's functional staging cues, little signals to coordinate the performance. The shoe salesman calling his colleague Benny might actually be a code for the shoe size the customer needs. Or that civil servant passing a discreet note to the minister saying, "Careful."
Subtle warnings or instructions hidden in plain sight.
Right. And then there's the more mischievous kind, derisive collusion. This is when teammates secretly express contempt or disagreement towards the audience or a third party while maintaining a polite front.
Like rolling your eyes when the boss isn't looking.
Perfect example. Or that knowing look exchanged between a couple when a boring guest is talking. It's a way of saying, "I know, right?" without actually saying it, creating a secret alignment against the official interaction.
So, given all these complexities and potential pitfalls, how do performers actually manage to keep the show running? What are the techniques for impression management?
Goffman divides these into two sides, the performer's efforts and the audience's efforts. On the performer side, we have defensive practices.
What do those involve?
Three main things.
Like where?
First, dramaturgical loyalty. This means teammates sticking together, not betraying secrets, not contradicting the party line in public, basic team discipline.
Got it. Keep secrets safe.
Second, dramaturgical discipline. This is the individual performer's ability to control themselves, to suppress inappropriate emotions, laughing at the wrong time, looking bored, showing anger, and to remember their lines, manage their facial expressions and tone of voice. It's about having the presence of mind to stay in character.
Like that example of someone high on marijuana trying to act normal.
Exactly. That takes real discipline to manage the internal state while projecting a normal front. And third, there's dramaturgical circumspection. This is about being smart and careful before the performance starts.
Planning ahead.
Yeah. Choosing your audience carefully, if possible. Limiting the amount of information you give out. Rehearsing the routine. Keeping the team small to minimize potential leaks or mistakes. Basically, setting the stage wisely to prevent problems.
Okay, so performers defend their show, but you said the audience helps too.
Yes, and this is crucial. The audience often engages in protective practices, which Goffman collectively calls tact. The audience actively helps the performers save face and maintain the definition of the situation.
Why would they do that?
Several reasons. Maybe they identify with the performer and feel embarrassed for them if they mess up. Or they just really want to avoid an awkward scene, a disruption of the social flow. It's often easier to help patch things up than to deal with the fallout of a collapsed performance.
So how does the audience show tact?
The most common way is just tactful inattention. You pretend not to notice a small slip-up, a brief stumble over words, a slight inconsistency. You ignore the stomach rumble during a quiet meeting. You readily accept a quick, perhaps flimsy excuse for a mistake.
Smoothing things over by politely looking away.
Exactly. But sometimes tact is much more dramatic and explicit. Goffman gives this incredible example, the MP incident.
Oh, right, the military police stopping the Jeep. Let's walk through that.
Okay, so you've got these MPs. They're performing their role, enforcing rules, being authoritative. They stop a Jeep driver who doesn't have the right paperwork. The interaction is framed as official inspection, potential violation. The MPs are stern.
Standard procedure.
But then the driver does something simple but game-changing. He puts on his cap. And it's not just any cap, it's a 4-star overseas cap, indicating he's a very high-ranking colonel.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. The MPs turn back, see the stars, and the entire situation implodes instantly. Their stern, official front collapses. One blurts out, "Good Lord."
That's the moment the frame breaks.
Absolutely. The Lord isn't part of the MP script. It's a spontaneous expression of shock and the realization that their previous performance was completely inappropriate given the actual status of the person they were confronting.
And then they immediately switch roles, right?
Immediately. Total shift. The soldier follows up with this terrified, highly conventional apology. "I didn't recognize you, sir." It's a desperate plea for forgiveness, for having violated the colonel's expected front, and an instant adoption of the subordinate role.
So the MP's reaction, that apology, is itself a kind of a performance of recognizing the mistake and showing deference.
Yes, it's a performed plea to restore social order. By acknowledging the mistake and switching to the appropriate deferential behavior, they're exercising a kind of retroactive tact, trying to patch the huge hole they just blew in the interactional fabric. Goffman uses it to show how powerful these tacit agreements about status and performance are, and how much effort we put into repairing breaches, even when forced.
It really underscores how invested everyone is in keeping these performances going, even the audience.
It does. The whole system relies on this mutual cooperation, this willingness to protect both our own fronts and often the fronts of others.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway from Goffman's dramaturgical view?
Well, I think it boils down to this really interesting tension, this dialectic he reveals. On one hand, individuals are deeply motivated to project a convincing, often idealized front. On the other hand, the very reason we rely so much on these fronts, these appearances, is because the underlying reality, someone's true character or intentions, is fundamentally unperceivable in the moment.
So, the less we can know for sure about reality.
The more we have to focus on managing appearances. If you truly care about being seen as competent or honest or kind qualities that are internal and invisible, you have to dedicate enormous energy to crafting the external signs of those qualities.
It makes everyday life seem less like casual interaction and more like constant high-stakes work.
Exactly, it's not trivial. Every time you interact, you're putting your self-conception, your reputation on the line. You risk embarrassment, humiliation, being discredited not just as an individual, but as a representative of whatever roles you occupy. It's a miniature dynamic system fraught with potential disruption.
Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. Building on this idea of managing potentially damaging realities, there's this related concept of organizational fiction.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't Goffman's term originally. I think Robert Dubin used it, but it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
It describes situations where, say, two different teams or groups both know some embarrassing or inconvenient truth.
And they both know that the other team knows it too.
Right. But, and this is the crucial part, neither side ever openly acknowledges the truth. They maintain a collective pretense, a shared fiction, often to save face or allow the institution or relationship to continue functioning despite the awkward reality.
It's like a conspiracy of silence, but everyone knows what's being silenced. Think about institutions, governments, corporations, maybe even family sometimes. How much relies on these unacknowledged truths, these shared fictions that everyone knows are false, but agrees to uphold just to keep the whole show on the road? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What fictions are you participating in right now?